Good evening, comrades. Welcome. I thought about doing this video at a later date, but then I got to thinking, no better time than the present. So this one I want to talk about what we did in prison. I'm an extrovert, so I have, for some particular reason, I have a knack of talking to people. I don't know if it's the psychology that I've taken over the years or what it is exactly, but I found that when I was in jail, it didn't take long before I could start talking to people, you know, and bringing this around to a lot of different folks. And somebody new would come in, and then there would be some people that already were waking up to this kind of thing, and so that just reinforced, you know, made it a little easier for me to talk about this stuff with people. So in a previous video, I talked about charging the warden with 2 counts of felony forgery. That was the reason, I think, why they kept me there for so long. I don't think any prison wanted to accept me. Or they were afraid that if we let this guy go, man, he's going to do this thing to another one. So let's just, hold him here or whatever the case may be. But I was in a facility that you usually only stay at for about 45 days, and they ship you out to some other thing, another different prison. But while I was there, I took some classes. They're like, you got to take this class. Okay, when you're locked down for 23 hours out of the day, and they say, hey, would you like to go spend, Monday through Friday sitting in a classroom with 12 other people, learning how to readjust to society after being locked up in prison. And I was like, look, man, I've only been locked up, a year or whatever. So, and I haven't been in prison, 2 months. So I don't know how much I'm out of line, but I'll take the class. And I went in there and I started talking to some of the other inmates, and they were in other pods, and got to talking to some Moors, and got to talking to some insane clown posse dudes, and different types of people, and from different areas of Tennessee. And I got to talking to them, and by talking to the instructor, I don't even know why they pay these guys. They come in and they hand out some papers in the morning, and then they might talk for 45 minutes, and then the rest of the time you're in this class, the dude passes out puzzles and colored pencils, and you're pretty much just sitting around coloring on stuff, playing games and talking with the other inmates. And so I learned how to, I learned people, how to talk to them, and it wasn't uncommon for inmates in the pod to come up, and talk through the crack of the door when they were out on their rec time. One guy I talked to, his name they called him Tabo. He shot a TBI agent behind the ear. And I was in the pod with him. I was in a gangbanger pod. Yeah. For about 5.5 months, I was in this gangbanger pod, and there's quite a few murderers in there, and and they'd put 4 different gangs in there. So and they all had their own phones. This is a G phone. This is a blood phone. After I got to talking to most of the OGs, they're like, hey man, you want to get on the G phone, I'll get you in there. So, I learned how to talk to the older guys, and, once you talk to the older guys, they'll get the younger spazzes, under control. But Tabo came to me and he said, hey man, I heard you understand some legal stuff. When you look at my case, I said, yeah, sure. So bring it to me. He said, well, okay, he brought it to me, and I said, I'll read it over the weekend. But before I could give it to him on Monday, they shipped him. So I had all this guy's paperwork. And they took him back to Jackson, Tennessee. Well, I was under the impression that he was already sentenced. He's like, man, I got a new lawyer, and this lawyer's trying to keep the death penalty off of me. And, so I'm thinking, that this is already over and he's waiting to be sentenced. But he was sent back to prison for violating his parole or probation. They put him in effect, and so they could lock him up. He's a murderer. And I looked at all of his paperwork. Well, I held on to his paperwork. About 4 or 5 days later, they brought him back, and he said, "Hey, homie, what can you tell me?" I said, "Well, you're pretty much screwed. If you're already sentenced, man, you're pretty much screwed. I don't know what you can do about it." He said, "Man, I ain't been to trial on this yet." I said, "Oh, okay, that's a different story." I said, "Let me think about it a little bit, and I'll talk to you at chow time." So I got to thinking about it. I said, "Wait a minute, So I seen him at chow, and this guy got mad respect from all the homies, man. You kill a cop and go to prison, and you're in a gang, you pretty much can write your own ticket. So I'm talking to him, chow, man. He rolls up on me. He sits down next to me, right? And, the guards normally don't let you do that stuff, but this is Tabo. So he sits down next to me. He says, "So what's up, homie?" I said, "Hey, you know what? You could probably try this, and it'll probably keep you from getting the death penalty." They had an airplane in the sky over this whole, it was a drug deal gone bad, over $950. Shot the agent right behind the ear. There was cameras in the vehicle and audio, there wasn't no getting around this. I said, "So, but, let's try and keep the death penalty off you." He said, "So what would you do?" I said, "Well, if it was me, I would go in there and I would say, look, Ronald Reagan started the drug wars in the 80s. So actually he declared war on drugs, and which means you're an enemy combative. Drug dealers are enemy combative. And here's this agent who is out of uniform, pretending to be one of your soldiers, on your side of the battlefield, in your territory, and they're in the projects. If I was you, I'd go in there and I'd tell them, hey, man, this is a war. I'm an enemy combative. You can imprison me, but you can't kill me. That goes against the Geneva Convention. So I talked with this guy for a little while because he wasn't really that bright. And I talked to this guy for a little while, quite a while, actually. And he said, well, I'm going back next week, man. And, I'll talk to this lawyer. So he leaves, and then he comes back, and I'm like, so what'd your lawyer say, man? He was like, he said, when I told him what you said, he said, who told you that? He said, well, this sovereign dude I'm in prison with. And he said, that's great. That's a great defense, man. He said, but I wouldn't do it. He said, I'm your lawyer, and I'm not going to argue that. That's a great argument. And it'd probably keep you from being, executed. He said, but I'm not going to do that. I try something like that, man, I'm going to lose my license. So I learned how to talk to people, and I was in contact with quite a few dangerous people. But I always felt comfortable. I don't know, for some reason, I don't think I ever felt like I was scared. And, but eventually they sent me to Turney Center. Like I said in the last video, Turney Center, military industrial complex. They had a woodworking plant on the compound. And, if you were good enough, you're a good boy and everything, and didn't get any trouble, eventually you could get on at the plant, and the plant paid good. My first cellie was a convicted murderer that worked at the plant. He made really good money in comparison. He had done 28 years on a murder conviction. And, when I talked to him, my first time in the, where I'm going, they put me in a cell with a murderer, you know what I mean? So, but he was cool, and statistically, most people that kill people don't kill again. But I got to talking to people when I got there, and it took a little while, for everybody kind of, they're always asking me, hey man, what you in for? And I'd be like, I don't know, I've never been told. Oh, well, you're a child molester, you got to be a chomo, you don't want to show your papers. No, I'm not, so I would show them what the TDOC gave me. When you're talking about 16 sheets of paper, 42 charges, you're like, show me your Thomas report so we know you're not a chomo. Okay, here you go. 16 pages, damn, man. Mine's 1 or 2, you got 16 pages of charges. So they'd see that once they figured out, I was cool and what I was really in there for. A lot of them started warming up to me, and I got to talking to them. Well, one of my friends was a 5-time convicted murderer, and he fought over 28 years and gave 4 of those convictions back. So he's just in prison for one murder. And he said, man, why don't you ever ask me about the killing and stuff, man? I said, man, I didn't figure it was any of my business. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of people deserve a killing. So I don't care, that's your deal. But we became real close. He was a Nation of Islam, and Louis Farrakhan and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X kind of thing. And we got along real well. And once I got to talking to him, he's like, you got some legal knowledge, man. This is taking me years to get where I'm at. And so I started going down to the library. We had an awesome library. And got down there, and there's really nice legal library, the best one in the state, as far as prison libraries go. And, I spent a lot of time down there. I was down there all the time, every time the doors open, I was in there reading law books. And, I've read all kinds of books, man, all kinds of United States codes. And I stole one of the books from the law library. I got it right here. Constitutional Law, 2nd edition. It's from West. That thick. So, I got to read a lot, and I was down there, and after a little while, people started, gathering around me, sitting around my table, asking me questions. Well, the old guy that was running the law library was a child molester, and but he'd been locked up quite a while, and he knew how to do papers. He'd done a lot of lawsuits, won quite a few lawsuits. And so a lot of people went to him, we'll overlook the fact you're a chomo, you help me with my legal work. And, but anyway, after about 2 months, man, this guy got caught with child porn on the computer in the law library. Yeah, bam, you're gone. So the lady guard that was running the library, she said, I see you sitting down here all the time, loaded up with books and stuff, and you're reading all these law books, and these young men are sitting all around you, and you're talking to them and stuff. She said, how would you like to be in charge of the law library? I said, well, yeah, I guess so. She said, you get a lot better pay, and you can be down here all the time, and whenever the library's open, you be here. The pay is better. I said, yeah, sure, as long as I ain't got to write any legal papers for anybody. She said, oh, no, you don't have to do that. There's other people that work in there as clerks. You just got to open up the door and turn the computers on, and hand people books or whatever. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And while I was in there, I wrote 13 habeas corpuses. I got in there and I did research on the habes, and I did 13 habes. And out of the 13 habes I wrote, 11 of the inmates were released. So, and I wrote it on jurisdictional challenge. Every one of them was on jurisdictional challenge. Because, see, you can challenge a jurisdiction even after the conviction. There's some pretty serious stuff, you know. So you can be convicted and be in prison and, you know, doing a sentence, years go by, and you can still challenge the jurisdiction. And when you write a habe based on the challenge of jurisdiction, the first one I did, I sent it to the wrong county. I sent it to the judge who convicted the guy. And they sent back a thing saying, well, you know, you can't do that. You have to do that in the county that the prison's in. So I was like, yeah, okay, thanks for telling me that. So we started doing it in the county, and every time something wasn't just right, they would send a notice. You know, we can't file this because you know, it isn't this. Okay, well, we're gonna fix that, and resubmit the habe. And after that, man, after 2 or 3 times of resubmitting a habe, we had it locked down. And they were releasing people. None of them were. My only pet peeve on the thing was, you know, if you're in here for a violent crime, and you know you've done it, I'm not even going to help you. You figure it out. You figure out how to do it yourself. So I'm not going to be responsible for letting some freaking rapist or, you know, whatever scumbag like that out. So I kind of filtered the people I was, you know, letting out or helping to get out. And but I was in there sitting in the law library, and my friend who was the NOI guy, he was a clerk in the disciplinary board. So that was a plus, having him as my dude. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, Chris," he said, this is one of my homies from, you know, like way back. He got caught with a piece of orange, and for those that don't know, it's Suboxone. And he got caught with a piece of orange in his cell. They did a search and they caught him. And he's in front of the disciplinary board, and so, what can we do? I said, well, it sounds like a conditional acceptance. He said, well, what's that? I showed him a copy of one. Man, it took off. He's going in for an appeal. Okay, so dude comes up to me and he goes, "Hey man, how should I do this? How should I handle this when I go in here?" Yeah, we served the warden, the guards, everybody that was involved with a conditional acceptance. And he said, "How should I go in there?" I said, well, first off, pray a little bit. That never hurts. And, no matter what happens, they're going to do whatever they're going to do to you. But no matter what happens, go in there with your nuts in your hand and come out with your nuts in your hand. No matter what they do to you, keep that. So he went in there, and my friend told me, man, he said, as soon as he broke the doorway, he's like telling this disciplinary board, "Hey man, this is how this is going down." Closed the door, and he was in there. He said, I could hear him. He was in there telling him, "Hey, you do whatever you're going to do, but I'm going to own you." He's going off. So he leaves the board, and my friend is kind of eavesdropping against the door, and he hears the guard, one of the guards, tell the sergeant over the disciplinary board that he talked to someone in the prison, and they talked to the prison attorney, and the prison attorney suggested that they drop the charges. So they did. After that, man, we was wide open with the conditional acceptance. And there were people that wanted to be transferred from a prison, and there was people that were, having problems with, medical, and we were hitting them. We were hitting them hard. We did 12 conditional acceptances while I was there, and 11 of them had positive outcomes. And while we were in there, they were like, "Hey, man, how are we going to do the lanes?" I said, "Well, here's what you're going to do. We'd been putting the notice of lien in with the lien. And I said, what we're going to do is we're going to create an assignment document, and then we're going to do the contract with the Treasury. But instead of having all this tax paperwork and stuff like we do, what we're going to do is we're going to give the Treasury the power of attorney to figure out how they want to create the lien securities. Here, man, here's the debt. We're assigning the debt from these liens, or this claim of lien, to you, Treasury, and because we don't have access to tax documents and or the any access or the ability to create these lien securities, it's up to you. You have my power of attorney, create the lien securities. So yeah, man, even from the prison. And when you first walked in the library, there was the desk and the clerks on the right, and a line of computers on desks to the left. There's 8 computers. I went in there one Saturday, and out of the 8 computers that people were sitting at, 7 of them were writing conditional acceptances. So they never could prove that I was doing that. I would come up behind them and say, yeah, or change this to that, or they'd come down and, what about this? And I'd be, yeah, change that. And it amazed me at the way some of these young men, once I told them, here, this is how the facts work. Put the facts in there the way you want them to. And here's the conditionals. Here's the conditions. Here's a list of conditions that you can do. And I would suggest doing most of them. And then add some yourself. Man, they were adding all kinds of conditions to these things. They were actually hilarious. Some were actually hilarious to read. But while I was in there, the guards didn't mess with me. There was one time they took the cellie out of my cell. They took my cellie out, and it was, I don't know, man, 6-7 months that I was in the cell by myself. They didn't even want to put a cellie in there with me. I never once spoke to the warden. And the day that they released me, he had told me, he said, your family's here to get you. They're really happy. They're really glad to see you're leaving, but not as glad as we are. What are you talking about? you know. But what I did is I taught those inmates how to write the conditional acceptance, but I also taught them how to teach it. I taught them the theory of it and the concept of it, and man, they took off and ran with it. And they were genuinely scared of me. One night they woke me up really early in the morning. How's you got to come down here and take a piss test? I went in there and I said, what happens if I don't? Well, then we're going to put you in the hole. Okay, under fraud, misarrest, and extortion. Without prejudice and all, I signed all that stuff like that. I'll piss in your cup now, give it here. I was clean. I was clean the whole time I was in there. But it scared them. It really did, man. And the thing is they test it. And if it was to come up positive, they'd have to send it off to have it tested. Well, one of the guys did this. I told him, I said, look, man, when you go in there, tell them, that, I'm not going to piss. And then when they say you got to, or, you go to the hole, sign it under fraud, misarrest, and extortion. And he did, and his piss was hot. So they sent his piss off to the private company that tests it, and they wouldn't test it. They said, we're not testing this. You took this stuff under, under extortion, man. We can't take this piss test and test it for you. So they had to release him and let him go. So the powers that be in the prison system, they were genuinely scared. There were a few guards that told me, hey, man, don't mess with me. I got a family, okay, dude? I'm like, I got a family too. And you're holding me here, yeah, but come on, man, yeah, we'll treat you right, man. So that's what That's how the power has, that's what kind of power this has. Even when you're a prisoner, locked up, a slave to the state, we were blasting them. We were blasting them to the point where they were like, get him out of here. All right, y'all. Thanks for being with me tonight. Peace and blessings.